Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Golden Gopher Hour podcast. My name is Callaghan-Croley, publisher over at Gophers Nation of the On3 Network, covering Minnesota and Golden Gophers athletics. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Tony Liebert of Bring Me the News. Tony, we're back at it here on Sunday morning. Less than 24 hours, really less than 18 hours after the Golden Gophers defeated the Spartans 23-20 in overtime. Just just a win that, we talked about it coming into the week. There was a avenue in which they could win this game, and nobody felt great coming out of it. That's exactly what happened on Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium.
I think you said it best. I wrote a couple things and tweeted a couple things that might imply, I guess, my feelings after a performance like that, even though they won. Like, it might be confusing to some people, but it just, like, there just weren't many positives from that game. I think the biggest one is that Drake Lindsey's the right quarterback for this program, I think. And he just has the right head on his shoulders, and he knows how to come up big in moments a few times this year. There's a real chance that they lose to Rutgers, Purdue, and Michigan State without Lindsey coming up big. So
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to start there because I do think he deserves credit for another big moment at the end of the game in overtime with that stiff arm. Even though if he got in or not, we don't know, but they ruled it a touchdown, so the Gophers have 6 wins. But other than that, I just think it was all concerning. The offensive play calling is still uninspiring. The secondary did not play well against a redshirt freshman quarterback. The just way that they started that game, because they finally got their first quarter touchdown since the Northwestern State game, and they didn't really build on it. There was just not much after that, and they didn't seem motivated, and it was just a sluggish effort overall, which is a bit alarming against a Michigan State team that really hasn't had much success at all in Big Ten play this year.
No, yeah, let's call a spade, right? This Michigan State team is a bad Michigan State team. I'm not sure what the rest of their schedule looks like off the top of my head. But I imagine there's a pretty good chance at this point that the Spartans aren't going to win another game. That they have Penn State, Iowa, Maryland. I think there's a pretty good chance that the Spartans don't win another game this season. And outside that Penn State game, because who knows what Penn State is right now and where they're going to be mentally come November 15th, those other two games, they're probably going to lose by 14 plus points. Everybody who played Michigan State coming into this week in Big Ten play had scored 30 plus points on them. Everybody had beat them by 11 or more points in conference play. And I apologize for the sound of my voice today as I still recover from being sick. And if it zaps some energy from me as well, if I come off boring in this episode. But there's no other way to put it that this was, they didn't deserve to win this game, and they won it. And I think the offense performance is just really concerning overall. 300 yards against one of the worst defenses in the country. When they went up 10-0, I'm like, all right, they may run away with this game and put a performance together that we thought could be capable of. But after they got that field goal in the second quarter, the offense was legitimately non-existent until the final drive of the fourth quarter when they had to score to win the game. To tie the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues that they have defensively right now are very correctable. The front seven played very well. They had a bunch of sacks again. The defensive line's finding their groove. The linebackers are playing well. And they just have a lot of injuries in the secondary, and I think that's what's hurting them. But offensively, there's just some alarming trends. This now Greg Harbaugh Jr.'s third season calling plays. And he made a lot of improvements last year. The Gophers offense in the second half of the year looked a lot better than it did the year before and the first few games. And they were more creative, less predictable, and it seemed like he was hitting his stride as a play caller. And I think the last few weeks he's taken a step back a little bit this year. And it's reverting a little bit to what we saw in that 2023 season that was very uninspiring with Ethan Callaghan-Croley at quarterback. And it's just the same thing, like, over and over again, and they're not really changing much, and that's what makes it, I guess, just, uh, annoying to watch sometimes because it's just not very clean offensive football, and, like you mentioned, it just this Michigan State defense is not anything special. It's one thing if you do that on the road against Iowa or on the road against Ohio State, but you're doing it at home against banged up Michigan State team themselves, and it just I just really didn't even get what their game plan was in the game. Fama Edgeboy started well. He had that long run. He had over 100 yards.
Had just 6 carries in the second half. In second half, and let me check overtime. 8 carries with overtime. I mean, he was having a great day. He was averaging 6 yards per carry, and he just stopped using them.
Yeah, it just didn't make much sense to me, and you can point towards the receivers not getting separation, all this stuff. They had Logan Loya and Kendrick Lanier the second out, so that kind of forced them to play Malachi Coleman, who didn't have a great game by any means, but there also becomes a point where the offensive scheme needs to scheme these receivers open and give them some more easy completions, and it's just the offense of scheme and performance the last few weeks has been uninspiring to say the least, and it's hard to see a scenario where it improves dramatically in the last stretch of the year here against 3 pretty solid defenses.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is who it is, I think, through 9 games, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing drastically that's going to change in your second bye week that's going to make this offense all of a sudden one of the best offenses in the Big Ten. And, credit to this team, despite a lackluster offense and a defense that has been up and down throughout the season, they're still, going into their second bye week, going into uh, the last 3 games of their season at 6-3, and they have a great chance to win 8 games this year. I think we agree that this team, as they've played the last 2 weeks, isn't going to beat Oregon. Maybe they come out as a surprise, but I would not favor them to beat Oregon right now, to say the least. And credit to them, they still have a chance to win 8, maybe 9 games, despite all these struggles. But it's kind of goes back to what we were again saying coming out of that Iowa game. Um, the wins and how they came by some of these wins, it just kind of leaves you feeling empty and not feeling great about the wins itself. Like, this is a great example of it overall. This game, there are plenty of Gophers fans who are, happy that they won the game for sure, but you just it doesn't give you warm, fuzzy feelings inside coming out of that one. The offense was lackluster. The defense gave up 500 yards, almost 500 yards in that, sorry, 467 yards in that game. Um, it just, you know, it was a poor performance from both sides of the ball. Even though the defense did have 7 sacks, 12 tackles for a loss, it was a poor performance in the second half from the defense. And they almost lost to what may be the worst team in the Big Ten. Yeah, that's my major takeaway. It's just very hard to feel good about this game overall, and the offense is a major issue at this point. And it's one that PJ Fleck is going to have to take a really long, hard look at in the offseason, because this has not just been a one-year issue now for the Gophers. The offense has been a multi-year issue to a degree. Um, and I think everything on that side of the ball has to be, looked at pretty tough this offseason.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's interesting when you look at it in a bigger picture. This is PJ Fleck's 9th season. And what I noticed to be interesting after a game like this, I've been covering the team now for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, but I kind of knew what he was gonna say after the game, which is the PJ Fleck experience. And like he even mentioned, you either like him or you don't, but it's just after a game like that, talking about how hard it is to win in the Big Ten and how he's so proud of his team and everything. Like, that's great. No one's questioning the culture that Minnesota has, but It just after a game like that, seeing it and hearing a coach take that approach rather than saying didn't deserve to win that game, we barely snuck by. Luckily, we got the right result in the win column, but we have so much to fix. There just really wasn't much of that sentiment, which I personally think's odd and concerning because anyone watching that game knew that the Gophers didn't deserve to win. There were two pretty interesting calls at the end of the game, picking up that pass interference, even though it was probably the right call to pick that up, and then Drake Lindsey's touchdown, like, just from a pure officiating standpoint, they could have easily lost that game.
Yeah.
And it just kind of makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes. That I'm like, was PJ Fleck watching the same football game as me? And again, good coaches find a way to win that game. Good programs do, and they found a way to win that game. But it just at this point of a coach's tenure, I just don't think you should be like scraping by in moments like this. And that kind of feels like what they're doing. And they could have easily lost Purdue. They could have easily lost to Rutgers. And this season could have been really off the rails. But they did find a way to win. And he deserves credit for that. The team deserves credit for that. The program deserves credit for that. But having this reaction after the game, like they just picked up a ranked win. Like it was just a similar sentiment after the Nebraska game compared to this one, which I just found odd because they were just two drastically different football games from a pure viewing standpoint. So that was one of my biggest takeaways after the game. I can't say I was surprised by the reaction, but it's just a big, I think, theme since PJ Fleck's been the head coach at Minnesota. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why they're kind of stuck in this 7-5, 8-4 window every single year, it seems like.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, you do see a lot of coaches, and some people may say we're just hating on at right now, and I disagree with that. I think you can do a lot of things that PJ Fleck does, and also be critical of your team in these situations as well. You see a lot of coaches of great programs, exactly what you said, would come out after a game like this and be like, "Hey, I'm glad we got the win. We played hard for 4 quarters, needed all 4 quarters to win that game, but we didn't play our best ball today. That game, a lot we need to work on, a lot we need to fix. Can't be making those mistakes going forward." You never really hear that out of PJ. It's almost like he's afraid to be critical of his players.
Yeah.
In those situations, like he's afraid that they'll feel that they're being thrown under the bus, and you very rarely see a coach throw a single player under the bus. Like, when was the last time you saw a coach go out and say, you know, yeah, our quarterback today just sucked. He couldn't throw a pass. He can't read. Yeah, they're never going to do that. They're not going to throw a single player on the bus. But you do see coaches go out there and be like, yeah, as a team, we didn't get it done. As a coaching staff, we didn't get it done. And now he'll say the coaching staff part here and there. But yeah, I do think, especially from a fan perspective, the last thing you want to hear after that type of game is the coach coming out and being all hunky dory. I'm glad we got the win, and just kind of completely ignoring the
game.
the game.
Yeah.
That kind of builds off that. One of my favorite PJ Fleck quirks is when he gets asked a question and he'll be like, if I had an answer, it would have been fixed by now. I just think is a bad answer for a head coach, period. I mean, I feel like the one thing you shouldn't be admitting as a head coach of a football program, even if it is true, is that you don't have an answer for why something is not good right now. So, I mean, that's just a side quirk there about Fleck that I get a good chuckle from. But yeah, no, I'm sure and I mean, who knows? Maybe it's not, but I'm sure that there's a little bit of a different sentiment inside that locker room, or maybe not in the locker room. I'm sure they enjoyed the win yesterday, but when they're going into corrections today or tomorrow, I'm sure that there's going to be some hard discussions. Yeah, I think both things can be true. One, it is very hard to win in the Big Ten and in college football in general. All wins should be celebrated. But yeah, it's the Fleck's, not attitude, but I agree with your sentiment about Fleck yesterday. And going off Fleck again, I mean, you pointed out yesterday after it, but how he opened up that press conference yesterday about, I don't know who he was talking to, but he clearly read or listened to somebody talking smack about him or the program this week and the row the boat mantra, and he took offense to that, and he let them know right away yesterday. I don't know who it was, but he let them know.
Yeah, he had a lot to say to open the press conference, which is very on brand for him. And again, like, I really don't look down upon a lot of people don't like the surfing and in the locker room, like the crowd surfing with his team
Right,
after a game like that. And I think that's overblown. Like, celebrate with your team how
right.
you want. Talking to the media, I think, is different because it's not your team and you're talking to essentially the whole fan base, I think. And that's what made the reaction odd to me. But his opening press conference, he spoke about a situation with a family that he was going through before the game and stuff. And then he slipped in that row the boat thing in the middle. And it was kind
Yeah,
of weird because he had this super emotional discussion about someone losing their child.
yeah.
And then he got all mad about people calling row the boat corny. And it was really, really interesting because I've not really seen Coach Fleck be that fiery in a moment like that, especially to open a press conference after a game. I don't know exactly who said that. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's one local sports writer
Yeah,
who's pretty old and senile, and he's not a big fan of PJ Fleck. And he has called Row the Boat corny before, but a lot of people have.
sure.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's one of the biggest things that non-Gophers fans point out about Fleck whenever they get a
yeah,
chance.
yeah, that's why I found it so weird for him to say it in that moment right there. I don't know if maybe a Michigan State player said something or a Michigan State coach said something or a broadcast said something, but it seemed like it was directed at someone immediately because people have said that it's corny since it's been a thing. So I thought it was weird, but I mean, as much as we criticize and analyze that game in a lens of it being an alarming performance, they did get a win, and they are 6-3.
No, and like everything he said is true, and I know we're probably nitpicking. I think we're not nitpicking this specific press conference. I think it's just more of a overarching theme that Fleck probably for a fans would probably like Fleck to be a little bit more critical after these type of performances than being, you can be happy you got the win, but also, be a little bit more critical. Because you never really get that critical aspect out of them. Even in losses, he'll be like, I'm proud of how we went out there and fought. He'll rarely bring up the bad in press conferences. I get that's just who he is, and he's been here forever. He's not going to change that anytime soon. But everything he did say in that open statement was true. They were resilient in that game, and at the end of the day, they found a way to score more points than the other team. They won the game, and they're bowl eligible. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is who has the W next to their name and who has the L. And Minnesota, for the sixth time in 9 games, has the W. And that's the only thing that matters. Going back to the game real quick, we talked about the offense, lackluster. Drake Lindsay, I thought, had a lot of positives, had some throws you'd like back. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not his best game of the year, but he came up in big moments like he did against Rutgers and like he did against Purdue, which I think is why he's the guy to lead this program at the quarterback position. I mean, it was naive to think that he was just going to come in and be the next Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck and be this surefire, perfect freshman. He's
Right.
had moments where he looks really good. He's had moments where he looks like a freshman. And I think this game was kind of both of them. He definitely missed a lot of throws, and it wasn't his cleanest game, but he came up big in overtime when the team needed him, and he played his best football when it mattered most.
Yeah, thanks for saving me there from my coughing fit. I thought the rushing attack without Darius Taylor, obviously, um, Elijah Boy had the bulk of the carries, 17 of 23, and 17 of 18 for running backs. I thought he was obviously really good. It again shows that the Gophers have a good option when Taylor is not healthy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As we wind down the regular season here, Taylor's health will be interesting because I still believe when he's healthy, he's one of the 5 best running backs in college football. But the fact that he hasn't been, it's hard to think that it won't affect his draft stock a little bit.
For sure.
And I think that could change his decision if he wants to return to college for another year or go pro,
Yeah,
how the Gophers handle this. And then with the emergence of Boy and now maybe AJ Turner coming back from injury next year, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that running back position because they also have Ryan Estrada verbally committed to the class right now, who I think's the level of talent that can contribute day one
yeah,
at a
Estrada.
college program. So
You're gonna have to give Estrada carries next season. He is too good to keep on the bench.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle that because the Gophers have had solid running backs for a while. This was the first time someone not named Darius Taylor at 100 rushing yards in probably quite a while. And I maybe can't remember. I think Grant Washington might have had 100 against in that Northwestern State game. But in like a big
He
game
did.
against a
He
power
did.
conference opponent, Boy came up, showed he can be a bell cow back. And it'll be interesting to see how that all goes together with Taylor, with Turner, with Estrada coming in, how they handled the future at the running back position, because I think there's really not a clear path from what could happen. I think a lot of things could happen from this point.
Yeah, no. Coming in this season, you asked me what I thought Darius Taylor was going to do. I would say have a good season, go pro, and especially because of his injury history in the past, you would think if he had a good season, he would go pro. Because who knows if he comes back, if there's another injury and that tanks his draft stock. But I do wonder if now, because he's been banged up again quite a bit this year, does that almost force him to come back for another season? So that'll only be something to watch. And next year's running back room will be very intriguing to look at. Also on the offense side of the ball, just kind of doing notables. Brockington, just another really good game. I mean, quietly, six receptions for 46 yards. He's up to 37 for 385. 37 for 385 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's definitely the number one receiver on this team, which I think is a bigger question because a lot of people thought Javon Tracy was going to be that heading into the year, and he's had moments this year, but he's kind of, I think, still looking for that next gear to become a number one option in the Big Ten. And we mentioned Loya and Kendrick Lanier were out of this game, which opened the door for Jalen Smith and Malachi Coleman to have bigger roles, who both kind of had up and down games. But again, they're both young players. So the wide receiver room in general is missing, I think, that one alpha. Lemeki Brogdon, I think he ideally is a great number two in an
Yeah,
offense,
yeah,
but he's kind of been that number one for Minnesota this year. And it'll again, talking about draft stock for guys, it'll be interesting to see where he goes because he was on the freaks list. He's a very dynamic athlete, and he's kind of starting to put it together this year. He's been a guy who's had a lot of injuries, but he deserves a lot of credit for how he's played all year. Easily their most consistent receiver.
yeah. Coming into the season, the thing with him is I don't think he ever had more than two, maybe three receptions in a game in his career. So the question was, can he, is there more there that he can find on a week-to-week basis than just two receptions for 30, 40 yards? And he's done that almost every week this season, getting a week out, and he's had some really big games in the process. I thought Javon Tracy's been solid this year as well, and Jalen Smith has obviously had his moments. Offensive line yesterday, I thought did mostly pretty well. I mean, they blocked the run pretty well and only allowed the one sack. So that's two solid performances in 3 games. It's just unfortunate for them. They also had a really bad game against Iowa in between there.
Yeah. And that was another unit. I mean, when you're starting a redshirt freshman, 2 transfers, it is week 9,
Yeah,
and you no
against
longer
a bad defense.
Yeah, you no longer want to have those excuses, but they're trying to find something, I guess. And there's encouraging signs that they could be a better unit next year. I mean, Nathan Roy, Greg Johnson, and Ashton Beers all seem like they'll return, barring any
Yeah,
unforeseen circumstances.
sure.
And then they can fill in those other 2 spots with any other returning guys or maybe some portal additions. But it's been encouraging to an extent, but again, far from the offensive line that they had in 2021 or 2022.
Absolutely agree. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball. First, I want to give credit here quickly to, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but Michigan State's starting quarterback yesterday. that first half, he was getting pressured all the time. He was getting sacked. Yeah, I think what sacked 6 times in the first half.
7, I think.
Was it 7 in the first half? But
6 in the first
first
half, 1 in the
half,
second.
yeah, 7 total. But he kept. I mean, they did a good job of rolling him out in the second half, moving pocket a lot. But despite taking a beating, even in the first half, he was standing in the pocket, willing to take that beating, and he had himself a pretty good day. He was 20 for 28, 311, and 1 touchdown. I thought that was a pretty impressive performance from a redshirt freshman in his first career start, especially when you throw in the idea that he was getting hit a ton early in this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because then you wonder how much the Gophers prepared for him
Yeah.
compared to Aiden Childs. But I mean, we even mentioned that there was a possibility that they made a change in this game. So I would assume the Gophers had a similar idea, or at least I would hope so, for veteran coaching staff. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Him and Drake Lindsay were around the same recruiting rank heading into or in their high school class, and they're both in the same class, both redshirt freshmen. And yeah, you make an argument that Michigan State's guy definitely played better in this game.
Yeah.
And
He gave the Spartans a chance to win that game.
yeah, he definitely deserves a lot of credit. But from a Gophers perspective, I'm continuing to be impressed with their defensive line, especially
Yeah.
at the edge position with Anthony Smith, and then Carter Menz and Jackson Howard continue to get better every week. And in the interior, this was probably Devin Eastern's best game of the year. He had the highest PFF grade of the year in this game for him. I think he almost had a grade in the 90s. So overall, the defensive line played very well, in the front seven in general. Again, Devin Williams and Maverick Baranowski had solid games. And the concerning trends are with the secondary.
Yeah, and that was the thing we talked about with Aiden necessarily, but that was something we talked about in this game was this Michigan State wide receiver room more or less against this banged up Gophers secondary, and yeah, we saw the results.
Yeah. And I wrote something about Coy Parrish last week, and it just when you had 2 all Big Ten caliber safeties returning, and there were the questions at the cornerback position, and we didn't even mention Zaquan Bryan ended up getting hurt pregame, and
Yeah.
they were forced to play Giante McMillan, which I kind of forgot happened until the end of the game. There's just so much going on
Yeah,
during the
it's
game.
it's easy it's easy to forget those types of things just because, especially when you're covering a game live, everything's just moving so fast, and you're trying to not just watch the play that develops in front of you. You're trying to keep account of who just came on or off the field. You know, if somebody just off to an injury, you're trying to see what they're doing on the sidelines. There's so much you're trying to keep track of. It's easy to forget those small things, even if there may not necessarily be a small thing in the grand aspect of the game, because obviously losing him is no small thing, but it's those types of little side details that do get lost in the mix during these games.
Yeah, and it just overall, they've had games without John Nestor. Giante McMillan played well in that Nebraska game, but it's just the secondary just did not play well on Saturday against Michigan
Yeah.
State. And when you have a first-year defensive coordinator, Danny Collins, who I guess climbed the ladder as a safeties coach, it's not a encouraging trend to see the secondary play at this level routinely week in and week out. I mean, it hasn't been horrible by any means, but it has not been great.
No, I agree. And, I think part of this, and this goes down to recruiting and to a degree development as well. But I wonder, and maybe you've had the same thoughts, and it's not something that's going to change because, again, this is just who Fleck and the staff is. But I just don't know how viable it is really to be throwing just 2 cornerbacks really out there any given week, and that's all you have out there for your cornerback rotation. I mean, Darius Green is in the nickel, so let's not count him. You have 2 outside corners. Yesterday, it was John Nestor and Giante McMillan. Those are the only 2 outside corners that lined up yesterday for the Gophers.
Yeah, and if you look at a bigger picture, I mean, they developed Justin Wally into a top 3 round NFL draft pick, but I mean, outside of that, their development at corner for high school recruits has not been good. Zaquan Bryan is a Big Ten starter, and they recruited him out of high school, and he deserves credit for his development. But I mean, outside of that, it's been nothing. They've gotten a transfer cornerback every year. They had Trayvon Jones from Elon, and then Ethan Robinson from Bucknell last year, and
Yeah,
now you're playing John Nestor from Iowa, Jonathan McMillan from TCU, who's not
right.
didn't even come as an outside cornerback. He was a nickel guy,
Yeah.
and
He was a
it's just
special teams guy mostly too.
yeah, and they have some interesting guys coming up. I mean, Mike Gerald is
Yeah.
injured. Naeem Parrish, true freshman, looks like he could be something interesting. Outside of that, it just has not been great developing their young corners, and I think that's kind of why we're seeing the issues that we're seeing.
Yeah, I agree, and it is good to note that, yeah, they obviously were down Brian yesterday. They were down Mike Gerald yesterday. But yeah, it's just even just going into it because more or less they went into a season with maybe 4 or 5 corners that they actually trusted. But it's just concerning when if you lose 2 of those, you're in a really tight situation, and they clearly do not trust any other cornerback in that room. And you would even think, hey, maybe 9 weeks into a season, maybe one of these young guys we can see what they have, but they just don't show the willingness to do that. And I think, side note, that's just one of the bigger things if I was gonna pick at PJ Fleck's coaching, is that I don't think he sometimes gets enough young guys snaps when the situations allow over the course of a season. You and me briefly talked about this week, but when I was looking at the snap counts for the season and I'm kind of projecting ahead of into the offseason, into next year, there's a couple of positions out there where the Gophers are going to lose a starter or two. And then the next guy up only has 25, 30 snaps this season, which may be all he has in his career. So then you're asking a guy who's has less than, let's just say, 75 career snaps to go into a season as a full-time starter with limited experience. And then when they struggle early on, everybody's wondering why. Well, it's because he didn't have, a ton of experience the first however many years he's on campus. I'm not saying these guys have to go play 20, 30 snaps every week, but I just think getting some younger guys who have that potential to be guys for you in a year are maybe worth trying to get more snaps out of over the course of the season. Even if it's only another 3 or 4 per game, I think it would be beneficial.
I agree. I mean, I see what their strategy is offensively in terms of that, but defensively, I totally agree with you. There are a
Yeah,
lot of positions
defense is where I'm specifically discussing that.
yeah, because they could lose a lot. They could lose Anthony Smith. Outside shot, they even lose Kerry Brown. And then just the seniors too, Devin Eastern, Jalen Logan-Redden, Devin Williams, even at cornerback, Jonathan McMillan, Darius Green. That's just a lot of bodies that could be out and not many people behind them that have played a lot.
Yeah, and we are starting to go a little long here, so we'll finish this up here shortly. If there's one good thing you could say about the defense outside the sacks, tackles for loss, because that's obviously really good. You'll take 7 sacks, 12 tackles for a loss any day of the week. Definitely one thing that is concerning is that they did not force a turnover again in this game. Continues to be an issue. Now, part of that is obviously the other team has to make the mistake as well. So part of it is you got to chalk it up to the other team just being good in that area that day. But at the same time, there's many different ways that an opposing or a defense can try to force those turnovers, whether it's exotic looks, whether it's peanut punches, whether it's, playing your coverage a certain way in order to bait a throw to your side of the field. There's different things you could do, and the Gophers just aren't doing those little things that could help create turnovers enough the last few weeks. So they had that 4 turnover performance against Purdue, but that's really it. They've been really struggling all season in that category, and for most of the last season and a half, if I recall.
Yeah, I someone in the press room maybe mentioned this that now they're like top 10 in the country in sacks and they don't have a single strip sack, which is pretty interesting. Like they've had a few interceptions, but again, that could just be coincidence because it's easy to say you need to get a strip sack, but the other team needs to fumble the ball. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a big thing that's holding this defense back from taking that next step. They're a solid unit, but they're definitely not a great one.
I now this would to a degree disguise some of the offensive struggles, but if they could average a turnover per game, truly average a turnover per game, not, you know, they have 10 and 9 games this year, so they're averaging over a turnover per game. But if they could get a turnover per game, which is a lot easier said than done, but great defenses do tend to do that, that extra possession or two per game could be all you need.
Yeah, that would have avoided overtime in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's definitely still a concern. But what I was going to say before I changed my thought process last time was despite the 467 yards allowed, it allowed Michigan State onto their side of the field 7 times, I believe. I think it was 7 times. Only allowed them to score on 4 of those drives, and only 2 were touchdowns. So while the defense bended a lot, they did not break a lot on Saturday. And that's another hallmark of a good defense. I don't think this is a great defense. I don't think this is an elite defense by any means. But I think this is still a good defense that, yes, when things go wrong, they tend to go wrong in very poor manners. But I thought, despite the 467 yards allowed, it was still a performance where you could take probably more positives from than negatives. Plus, 43% of Michigan State's total yardage in this game was from 3 plays.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think they have enough to build off, and there's moments where they can correct things in these last few games of the year. The Oregon game will be its own beast, but there's, I think, reasons to be encouraged against Northwestern and Wisconsin, and I think there's plenty from this defense to not be alarmed by. But more of my tend to be on the offense side of the ball with this team right now, and it'll be interesting to see how they correct them down the last few weeks of the year.
Absolutely agree. I think with that Oregon game, you have a week now to prepare for the Ducks, and we'll see what happens. I think it has a chance to be a statement type game. Obviously, not expecting a Gophers victory right now, but if you can go out to Oregon and compete with the Ducks like Wisconsin did a few weeks ago, I think that would definitely change a lot of the feelings around how some of this season has transpired. But if they go out there and get their doors blown off like they did against Iowa and Ohio State on the road, it's going to give that empty feeling this season, even if they do win 8 games. Because, yes, you won 8 games. You beat a lot of the teams you should have beat. But at the same time, if you have 3 blowout losses in those 4 losses, I think it makes a lot of fans feel great about the season as a whole. Because, yes, you won a lot of games, but at the same time, in those games against that next tier of opponents, you still were very far off. So I think that game has a chance to really dictate how we feel about this season as a whole. And going back just to the overall feel of the season, they'll be very curious to see how Cal finishes out their year because since that Minnesota win or that win for Cal over Minnesota, the Golden Bears have lost 4 of their last 6 games, including 3 of their last 4. They lost yesterday 31-21 to Virginia. Justin Wilcox could be on his way out in Berkeley. So that what they do could also, kind of change how people feel about this season. Because if they crash and burn here the last 3 weeks, that looks like a poor loss for the Gophers.
Yeah, it should be interesting. This game at least opens the door for them to have some opportunities, but it'll be an interesting end of the year.
Nonetheless, 6 wins, bowl eligible. That's all that matters. The Gophers will be going bowling once again under PJ Fleck. And as we all know, they have a 100% winning percentage, or 1,000% winning percentage under PJ Fleck. They've never lost in a bowl game. So clearly they're going to win a bowl game this year again. But no, we'll see who they face. There were some intriguing bowl matchups out there this past week against a lot of opponents that the Gophers haven't seen in a long time. SMU, I saw Clemson, I saw LSU. So all those would be intriguing matchups for one reason or another. So we'll see where the Gophers ultimately go. But depending on how they finish, they could be facing a pretty wide range of bowl games here in the next few weeks. Music City Bowl has been there. The Pinstripe I've seen. The Game Above Sports Bowl in Detroit. I'm sure there's a bunch of Gophers fans who want to go back to Detroit in December. So yeah, it should be interesting to see where they end up. And to a degree, their destiny is in their own hands with them.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, well, with that, we'll end this episode here today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our episode of the Golden Gopher Hour podcast. My name is Callaghan-Croley. He's Tony Liebert. Yeah, enjoy your week. We'll be back soon. Maybe we'll do a bye-week episode. We'll have to discuss. But, Tony, any lasting thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think we touched it on everything enough. It obviously was an interesting game in terms of it felt like an empty win. But the Gophers did win, and
All that
they're bowl
matters.
eligible, like you mentioned.
Yep, that's all that matters is another Gophers win. But yeah, plenty to work on in the bye week as they prepare for Oregon. Don't forget, Gophers fans, that game is not a Saturday game. That is a Friday night game in Eugene on November 14th. So your next two Saturdays will actually be free if you're a Golden Gophers fan. We'll talk to you soon, whether it's this week or next, we'll find out. But have a good one, everybody, and we'll talk soon.